And now, a 3-hour lecture on how Peter Pan is a pedophile. What? This is a movie review.
Jam on toast!
Hey everybody, welcome to the Jam. I'm Cameron, today the toast is to Hook, 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 Hook. This is part of Hardy Movie Club, where our good friend Alan compiles our videos together every week and makes something special out of it. So be sure to go over to the Mr. Harry Brits channel for all your Harry needs. So the short sale on this one is that Peter Pan's all grown up. He's forgotten that he's Peter Pan, and he has kids of his own. Captain Hook ends up kidnapping his kids, taking them back to Neverland in order to entice Peter Pan back for one final war. My love for this, and I did not notice this at all growing up, is the details that they put into it. Like, I swear that the voice of the pilot on the plane is Dustin Hoffman. And I think that's kind of a metaphor for James Hook writing the book, the story, and being the one who pilots their adventure in the air. Because flying is a part of being in Neverland, and he's the author, the orchestrator of everything. So it's this nice little bit of the meta for you to chew on. Other things like the little pixie footprints on his shirt. They even sort of point one out when they do the steps, the carpet. I really thought that was funny. My hated is almost the same thing, because they look like they miss parts of it. Like the one thing, if I had to boil it down to one thing, where the hell does Captain Hook's bed go when it's cranked up? If you're unfamiliar with what a ship looks like, there's not a lot of room. That's a pretty big cabin that he has in general. But even if it's a vaulted ceiling, which doesn't make any sense on a ship whatsoever, where's the bed go? You're essentially telling me he has a 2-story cabin that expansive on top of the ship? Because I can't imagine that would go up to another floor where someone could go lay on his bed when he's in the planning stages of everything. My favorite character out of all this was the little girl. She has so many good lines where she's just like exasperated. But my overall favorite line was definitely, "That's my dad?" Like where she sees him fighting for the first time. It's great. But the MVP, the one that really made this movie. Now, Robin Williams was born for the role of Peter Pan. I'm telling you, he just missed some window where he got to play at an appropriate age. So they made up this whole thing just so he could be Peter Pan. But Dustin Hoffman is the one that brings this home for me. I don't know what weird space he goes to in his head when he gets into a character, but him and Gary Oldman just make some of the best unique characters ever. And this version of Captain Hook, I just love it. So the only bad part of him being Captain Hook is where they're fighting and he goes to Peter Pan and he says, "To a 10-year-old, I'm enormous." I think I paused the movie there and was just like, did that just happen? Is he after Pan's booty? I don't know. Like, that's a weird fantasy type thing there. Let's get on to the categories. Aesthetics. Now, look, I'm a big Never fan, and I really like these child empowerment movies. They're things that I loved growing up, and I love seeing them now, and I think they're just so deep when you look at the psychology of it. But really, this is one of the few movies that is not CG, that is not claymation, that I really just like the aesthetic to it. I like the way the pirates look, and the pirates are bad guys. Because normally, like, when you have really good pirate aesthetics, they're good guys, or anti-heroes in the very least. And I really like this. They're villainous pirates. They're good in their own right as far as characters go. And the Lost Boys, they did them up really well. They even had the one kid that's like wearing a suit, which I thought was a neat thing. All the kids have their own look, their own stylization, and that's representative of the chaos of being a child in a child's mind. Just whatever. It's like, we don't have to do this. We'll do whatever we want. We're free, and it's empowerment in its own right. The way the whole hideout is set up is like that, and there's just very little structure, which is very representative of the thing. The way they use Tink, I've definitely seen worse, but I've seen a lot better, especially as the years have gone on. But for what this time was, that's pretty good. Having her run around in like a dollhouse set, Peter talking to Tink like that. When she's a little light running around, they do it really well. There's that scene where like she goes dagger to Hook with Captain Hook, and I really liked that. I thought that was a great screenshot. That was a great moment, and it was a real little moment. It's very passing when it comes down to it. It's in the middle of the building up to the having the war in the first place. England was done super well. You could definitely tell the difference between England and America. There was no things there. Even on the plane, it was set up real nice, and it was shot from very good angles for all the scenes, and they got close when they needed to get close, and they just have some beautiful wide open shots in that nursery where the kids are sleeping, and like that's a beautiful wide open shot out the window over in Neverland, just off the ship. They did such a good job making the movie look good, and just even like adding in the sounds when the crocodile was tipping over, and aesthetics gets a 95. Character development. Without getting into the psychology of everything that's going on, and everything being a metaphor for something of being a child fantasy type thing, where you're expressing empowerment and freedom of will and just applying yourself to things. This movie does a good job. It is heavily centered on Pan building up to being Pan again, and what it is to be what you remember yourself is, and are you really something if you don't perceive yourself to be, across with believing in yourself to become what people either expect you to be or what you want to be, or becoming what you need to become. There's just, you could write an entire book on the psychology used in this movie. It's amazing. It's a little taxing when you start delving into it, but I think it's accessible enough, because I remember liking this when I was real young, before I really got into looking at the psychology of things and understanding how people tick a little bit. So I think it's fairly accessible. I think kids hear Peter Pan and they're like, yay! And then they're like, oh, he needs to learn to do this, because all the kids are there and they all know, and so kids are going to relate to the kids of the movie who are relating to Pan, so you kind of grow with them in their understanding of things. But I think it's fair to say that Tinkerbell and Captain Hook and Rufio and even his wife end up going through quite a bit of character development. You could even make an argument for Brad going through a bit of character development, because he has to now deal with Banning becoming who he is by the time he gets there. So it's a neat little subtlety to everything. Even Toodles, which is a wonderful, wonderful moment that that happens. It's all over the place. It's a little heavy when you start getting into it, but I think it's still pretty accessible. Character development gets an 88. Storyline. Who doesn't love the story of Peter Pan? Everyone can relate to this idea of being a child who wants to fly free of responsibility and free to do whatever they want and be self-empowered. And there's the parents there to stop you, and that's what the pirates represent. And I think if you boil even all that down and get past it, just having Peter take on Hook again as an adult and having to go through this trial and tribulation of becoming Pan, even if he is Pan being like a title instead of a name per se, because you hear Rufio say that I'm the Pan now, because he's the one in charge. He's the one that took over. He's the one that had the ruthlessness and the ambition to fend off the pirates from killing off lost boys and whatnot. And adding in the children and making them sympathetic to Hook, and it tugs at your heartstrings a little bit. They're there to add sympathy to the story so that you care a little bit more about him battling Hook. Because what plausible reason would an adult have to go back and fight Captain Hook in a pirate sword battle thing? No, grown-ups don't think that way. They can't get their head around the motivation to do that. That is a child's fantasy type of thing applied to an adult setting, which is what makes it wonderful to me. Storyline gets an 88. Compulsion. This is a fun movie that has just layers upon layers of things. You can notice little subtleties throughout the movie. You can dive way down in it and just pull up piles of psychology. You can just enjoy people flying. If you're into Julia Roberts, she's around as a pixie. That's got to be somebody's fantasy right there. My point is that anybody can find something to love in this movie if you look in the right places. This is specifically a story that was written For Peter Pan was specifically a story written to entice you to remember what it was like to be a child and fill yourself with that wonderment. And I highly encourage you to allow that to happen, because it definitely can. And if you're like me and you're inclined to look a little bit deeper, it's there too. It's really rare you get both a movie you can completely turn your brain off and just enjoy, and a movie that you can really delve in and think about. Compulsion gets a 92. Now, if you total that all up together, you get an average of 90.75. For my wrap up review, I've got to say that makes it a top tier movie. I would expect people to have this movie. This is one of those, if they're my age or older, this is a movie that came out and they at least knew the Disney Peter Pan, and then they saw this, and so it's something I would expect people to have, and it's something that, especially if there's other kids around, that they can have them watch, and as long as they can get the kids through the setup of the story, because it does take a little bit to get there, not too much, but kids have short attention spans. It's one that's worth watching, and I recommend everybody watch it. That's it for me. I'm Cameron. If you don't like me, bite me. If you want to see anything else we're up to, go ahead and click the annotations, and they'll take you to our other channels.